Hola, niños y niñas de todas las edades. Soy Niño Perdido 14,000. Welcome to August, where I finally decided to make another video again, and this time it isn't to yell praise into my scarecrow just as various iterations of Blaze Epic. A few of my cousins from the sanctuary are relatively anxious to see this one, finally, as it's been on my talking schedule forever. Grand Theft Auto! And where to start? Do I turn this into a video essay on the plot of later games? Should I drag this train wreck out by going over each game and its mechanics bit by bit? Should I go into the conspiracy theory about how Claude's speed is a time-traveling and that's why all the games, except for the first one, take place on an island chain? Well, seeing as the only people looking this up will be fans and people wondering what I'm doing this quarter, let's start with history. And when I say fan, I don't just mean fans of the last two. After 5 and Online dropped onto our eye sockets from on high, I saw several different top 10 style videos with trivia only from 5 and Online and one little token factoid from San Andreas claiming to be for the fans. Hype chasers! Grand Theft Auto isn't just a game or two, it's a franchise, and a very segmented franchise at that. So yeah, it's about time I said this. I can be a very cynical person, but when it comes to fiction, games, movies, things of the sort, if I find a series that catches my eye, I try to experience all of it. That way I can tell if the latest hype train is just an effect of good marketing for a fresh that is yet to be drained and disposed, or if the latest flash in the pan of culture is in fact part of a venerable family of titles that is in some way evolved and innovated with its latest offspring. When I was a kid, I knew both the series and the children who played it for their poor reputations, and quickly wrote it off as a garbage game for garbage people. Then a full 7 years later, after I had turned 18, someone let slip that it was a sandbox game. And I thought, wait, I know those, in both their repetitive and not-so-repetitive varieties. So having a functional PS2 at the time, I bought the PS2 collection. And since that far-flung summer, I have since played all of them, to a point. Okay, I never finished 1 or 2, and honestly I couldn't get a working copy of 1961, but having played the series I can say that GTA is indeed an evolved male power fantasy and not a pile of with like one good one on life support. Of course, you may ask how it all got started, and many gaming historians will tell you that it was a glitch, which is the lamest excuse for a lie I have ever heard on the subject. The story starts with a bunch of nerds who would meet up to code small games in a Scottish nerd club during the 80s. They coded up some good ones, found a good match with Cyanosis as a publisher, and after some schooling the nerds founded a company known as DMA Designs, and subsequently fell in love with one of their projects called Lemmings. Following that, they got Nintendo as a publisher, relaunched some of their projects with Midway, and finally started work on a cops and robbers style game called Race and Chase. It's here they encountered a glitch in the alpha states of Race and Chase that made the police NPCs act like criminals. I bet the DMA heads were having a when they started getting news that the glitch was more fun than their own game. Race and Chase was reworked by hyper nerds David Jones and Mike Daly and finally released as the 2.5D Grand Theft Auto. Then, with a series of buyouts and mergers going on in the background, including DMA's own acquisition of BMG and Spidersoft, the hyper nerds released mission packs for GTA 1 and Grand Theft Auto 2. But Take-Two bought out all of them, attempted to move the base of operations to New York, USA, and put the major golden boys from BMG in charge, effectively creating a new hive mind known as Rockstar. And the remnants of DMA in Scotland reformed to become Rockstar North. David Jones stuck it out through the release of GTA 2 before finally leaving the company. But don't start yourselves just yet. Jones went on to make more indie studios, and he was one of the driving forces behind APB Online and Crackdown. Now you can start yourselves. But as prevalent as the series has become, you'd have been hard-pressed to find many like it back then. Sure, Body Harvest, also by Proto-Rockstar, was an open-world sandbox, and RPGs at the time allowed for open-world exploration, but GTA doesn't require you to complete a series of challenges to play the game, or even make progress. Just think, in a world where Mario was telling children to move to the right, RPGs had you doing missions, and fighting games the world over had older brothers, fellow men to finish a game. GTA didn't. It was like, do whatever you feel like. The game. Sure, you could go to the blinking payphones and get threatened into doing some dirty work for the local crime boss for points to unlock the next city, or you could walk around like a normal person, get sworn at by passers-by, search for and collectibles, or you could jack a car and start down those members who had to push you out of the way just one too many times. The original GTA almost comes off like a game that allows you to do whatever you want and be whoever you want to be. They even let you play as a woman. Yes, really. At the start of every playthrough you can choose a person to be from 4 men and 4 women. Except it's not really true. No matter what character you choose, the sprite is always the same guy in blue jeans and yellow sweater. So when things do get violent, it's like Arthur Reed's just escaped from the Carson City Sanitarium. Again. The whole thing plays like kind of a first-person shooter with a top-down view. Buildings are already 3D, so I bet someone could easily make a mod that makes it play like third-person Doom, or GBA ports of Driver 3. 1969 is more or less the same story, except you drive on the wrong side of the road, the 4 men you can choose from are like progressions from Ringo Starr to and the player sprite is always the same guy in a brown jacket and red bell-bottoms, so it's like the prequel to that 70s show we never got, or Doctor Who if it didn't. And GTA 2, the last of the 2.5D GTAs, managed to turn the series on its head by adding in layers to the game mechanics. GTA 2 was really the first one to embrace a single character, Claude Speed, and island chains as its setting. Each island has areas ruled over by 3 rival gangs, and your reputation stats with each one changes based upon what missions you do and how much trouble you cause in each area. Add in more competent steering, a few sci-fi weapons, some mods, a save function that requires you to make a massive charitable donation to a church. GTA 2 comes off more like do whatever you feel like too. It just got real. But with Looney Tunes level action and a massive tongue-in-cheek like you just walked in your cousin kissing Gene Simmons. With the addition of more weapons, there's point to fire aligned plasma rifle to shoot lightning, aim rocket launcher to become the action is more punchy for sure, but I do hate the camera zooms in way too far if you're not moving fast enough. I understand it's supposed to be for more precise movements, but it covers parts of the screen I'd rather see than the zoomed in view of Claude's scalp. I'll cover Claude more in a later episode, but suffice to say that the main character is established as an amoral who may or may not look vaguely like Elvis. His interactions and missions with feel more like skirmishes or busy work for organized crime and not more variations of do this random thing or I'll rip your eyes out, Arthur. There's a ton of little details and improvements here or there, but I haven't really played enough of one or two to be an expert. Just enough to say that yes, Vice City, Liberty City, and San Andreas have been in there since the first game. 69 is awesome, if a bit flat, and 2 is a major improvement in every way except for the camera. If you're not willing to deal with an exploration game that keeps a fixed overhead perspective and for which you need to print out a map to play, then I do recommend that you check out GTA the movie. Yes, there was a video released of Claude in an alternate costume tearing up the town, doing missions, and Zaibatsu Corporation enough for them to send out a hitman. And honestly, just watching it, the video looks like a dramatic version of everything that we got in GTA 3, just minus that bit with the assassin. Not the worst routes a game could have, but hey, the jump from 2D to 3D never goes poorly, right? Right? No. Okay, that was weird. Jarrett ban August Ushle, Tem Liam Kerte 14,000. And today I'll be talking about Grand Theft Auto 3, the title that has aged the poorest out of all the franchise. Yep, even compared to 2.5D crazy Arthur and sci-fi future anti-Elvis with a top-down camera, this game, further steeped in the modern reality of 2001, is so buggy and unpolished that, in my area, the game has gained a reputation as the one you should never play. I disagree. While the game is in need of more polish, I'd say it's more akin to a muddy, violent dog that nobody wants to house, rather than the slime-covered broken mess that was Dag's pelvis at launch. Quite frankly, the game does a good job of pulling me in, despite the subject matter and the time that it was released. In mid-1999 to 2000, Rockstar and Rockstar North started work on the fifth iteration of its cartoony criminal sandbox simulator, with one of the big boys from BMG at the forefront. It was set up for release in mid-2001. While unpolished even then, the game was allegedly planned to have limb removal, a few of the sci-fi weapons from GTA 2, building and a small mission path that was an outright homage to violent religious extremists. But lo and behold, you couldn't call these topics irrelevant, and they were shoved to the forefront of American politics when extremists set about advertising their own violent sandboxes for sale. After the nations of the world were done crying or shrugging their shoulders, as the case may be, America retaliated, invaded the enemy's neighbors in search of more enemies, destabilization, and some oil, allegedly, and allegedly. Meanwhile, back home, the citizens hadn't gotten over the tragedy, and as such, many forms of media had to be edited or outright censored entirely in order to fit a massive portion of its audience's tastes. So now, in GTA 3, Death had more of a falling down animation. No real sci-fi weapons, no destructive building. There was like one tiny plane, and it was total garbage to fly, and a cut, possibly religious extremist character that could be put back into the game as a random NPC with mods. And they had to set about cutting all this out instead of adding in a character creation menu. In fact, some people say that this re-edit by the game staff is what inspired the comic book style covers that we have now, instead of the cartoony city on fire that we would have had. As to the dodo and lack of planes, Rockstar did make statements to the point of, but this is a driving and game, not a flying and game. It would be silly to include planes. Aww. Of course it would be Rockstar. But still, back to the game. As I mentioned in my previous video, Claude Speed was the protagonist of GTA 2, a violent that allegedly looked like Elvis, and as I mentioned mere sentences ago, GTA 3 was meant to have a customized player character, but because of the time crunch, the character that we got is a silent, but not mute, man who looks vaguely like Elvis, and he's dressed in an alternate costume for Claude Speed from GTA 2 the movie. And both the source code and later games in the series refer to this character as Claude, and Rockstar won't officially comment on whether or not they're the same person. Well, based on the sheer bad level of Claude in GTA 3, I'd like to think they're the same person. The main argument against this stems from the fact the time of Anywhere USA in GTA 2 was supposed to be either in 1999 or 2014-ish. So in 2001 in GTA 3, Claude has either gone from urban mercenary to street urchin all over again, or Claude has to be like 14 in GTA 3, to which I reply, shit! GTA 2 has sci-fi weapons! What's to say Speed Racer here didn't find a time machine at Zaibatsu or hop into another dimension? I mean, really, it's only like a half a step up. Actually, that could cover something else in GTA 4, and nope, going on way too long, speculation over. At the start of this game, Claude Speed is seen robbing a bank with 2 other people, but after he rounds the corner to get to the getaway vehicle, his female partner shoots him in the chest and takes the money for herself. From here, Claude is swiftly sentenced for armed robbery and on his way to prison. On the way there, the armored truck that he's in gets stopped and his captor's knocked out. Then some nice men with take a little Chinese man from the back of the truck, and they leave you and your injured escapee friend to fend for yourselves when they blow up a major city bridge. And that's where the game starts proper. Your black friend with the bandaged hands, 8-Ball, claims to have a safe house nearby and ties to the mafia. Once you get there, find a change of clothes, and do a few tutorial missions, the game, as well as the tiny New York-style island, roll away from you in a million different directions. And just like before, you can choose to do missions for people in the mob, or you can run around, drive about, exploring every nook and cranny of this new sandbox city for secrets, weapons, and challenges. Back are the strange ringing payphones that give you additional mission paths, and the pay and spray garages that make police and pursuers forget about you once your car has been fixed up a bit. In order to save progress, all you have to do is return to your latest safe house and take a nap, rather than donating a massive sum of money, and money has more of a point now, rather than your score or save fee, as you can purchase weapons from ammunition or back alley arms dealers. And the game design. Okay, game design certainly has its ups and downs. After all, it is a wacky criminal underworld simulator, but with a strange focus on realism sometimes. On one hand, there is realistic physics for jumping, realistic map design with traffic patterns, districts, and weather system that generally makes roads feel like you're on a ice skating rink. In the middle ground, you can find speed, weapons, extra health shields, cars, and pickups all around the map. And on the far side of the spectrum, away from logical, you can earn money by making sweet jumps in vehicles. Cops lose interest if you go into a garage. And the characters are all archetypes taken from various action movies. And if you do choose to do favors for the various criminal heads, you'll find that when struck together, the missions make a very deep and involved story. However, a major pull of the 3D verse, many of them presided over by Dan Houser, is the fact that many of the character actions and vignettes taking place are heavily based on or else outright lifted from crime drama and action movies. In GTA 3's case, I'd say it kind of follows the plot of Revenge, the Mel Gibson movie. Don't take that to heart though, this is still so much more than Revenge, the game. After escaping from the police, rather than lay low, Claude Speed opts to show up for little job interviews with the local underground. At first it's just little things, go pick up a car from a place, deliver a Mafia Dahlia's girlfriend to a nightclub, but slowly Claude edges his way up the social ladder, getting more and more dangerous missions, and then suddenly the game flips into overdrive as you're forced to go on foot through a mission in Chinatown as you're suddenly asked to master firearms, all the while playing sitting duck to several triad enforcers at your back. And you would be surprised at how much money this game pitches Claude compared to the rest. Even the optional side mission cabs afford you a lot of hard-earned cash and or excitement. Jack a cab, get entire wads for speeding a passenger to an objective marker. Or jack first response vehicles and do first response stuff. You can even hijack cop cars and do assassination missions, or vigilante missions as they're called, on other criminals like a fantasy Batman. What's that, the Punisher? Never heard of him. I don't know. I guess you can chalk it up to being heavily connected as far as the money goes. But after doing jobs for a downtown, you get passed along to a loudmouth and his overbearing mother, and even the Don's son, Joey, who owns a garage in the warehouse district. To be perfectly honest, Luigi and Tony Cipriani are kind of demanding, but I like Joey. He seems to have a lot of class for his position, and I hope he makes it someday. Then you get to meet the Don, whose girlfriend we were ferrying around earlier. The Don, have you ever met a very sweet... I know I went to middle school. After helping the Don out with the cartel and the triads and the Forellis, he sends you on one more little mission, and then my pager went off in-game, and for the first time it wasn't just being used to remind me of a new mission or tutorializing the controls. If you actually bother to read it just then, it's a warning from the Mafia Don's girlfriend, Maria. Apparently she started talking and needs to leave with you to Little Tokyo, and so the next portion of the map was unlocked, and I bid a temporary farewell to the back alleys and city streets I had come to know so well. Then I got introduced to a new section of map, and the bridge back to Mafia territory that was definitely not bombed by... We know, we checked, it was totally organized crime. I mean, with like 9 and less than 10 square miles, why wouldn't it be? Was finally repaired. From here, you start doing jobs for the Yakuza against your former bosses, and then start doing higher priced missions for a dirty cop, an arms dealer, Donald Love, and more random voices on the telephone, all the while thwarting your ex-partner and taking every chance to get even with that sadistic... Actually, have I met you somewhere? All this culminating in a final mission path wherein you mime your way into working with Asuka and Maria again to take down Catalina and the cartel. Sure, the game has its issues, but Grand Theft Auto 3's genius moments far outweigh its ones. Sure, the city is relatively small, but it's complex and manages to feel huge and yet memorable. Claude, for all his mute reflective glory, is never portrayed as moral. In cutscenes, the man will at least respect those who aren't outright trying to attack him, and will certainly explain your place in life if you attempt to get in his way. The game is hard, harder than you would think, but it certainly earns its name. Oftentimes, the places that you need to get to are so far away, and you are practically helpless, inches from so the only way to arm yourself and get away is to jack a car at the nearest stoplight. And the police are teleporting mercenaries from the 2.5 dimension. Listen to this. The render distance is roughly about 3/4 of a mile, and once an object goes beyond that, they are usually unspawned, which makes most racing and follow the leader missions a bit of an... Assuming you have a car fast enough, if you outrun the police, they despawn. Then suddenly, super time cops will spawn in, canceling all physics, except for your momentum, for about half a second. Once gravity and friction take a hold hold of your car again, the car will give a slight jerk as you hit the road. But that's not the part you should be worried about. If you're still driving incredibly fast after the jerk, slowly your car will accelerate past the maximum speed, and as you brake, looking back in a panic, you'll see that futuristic police cruisers of Liberty City have latched onto your bumper and have started pushing you past the speed of sound as an attempt to catch you. But now you're braking and Claude Speed can't swim, and truly the game has aged poorly. But it's an excellent introduction to the series, far better than GTA 80s, GTA Boys in the Hood, GTA Mafia, or GTA The Italian Job. There's no theme to get in the way of the straightforward underground crime pure power fantasy. And it is a power fantasy. In the end, you blow up the major villain, take out anyone else who would have done you wrong, and you own the freaking city. And it worked because it experimented with plot, physical architecture, secrets, and it knew what mechanics to keep from GTA 2, as well as the changing loyalties and the feeling that your actions have consequences in the rest of the game, even if you're making things worse. But it was great, right? I mean, the best one, right? I mean, the jump from 2D to 3D and... Oh... Not the worst routes a game could have, but hey, the jump from 2D to 3D never goes poorly, right? Right? No. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis enfant perdu 14 000. And I'm still treading the grounds of the Grand Theft Auto universe. Today I'm going from the one that no one should ever play to the one that everyone has played. Yeah, the freeform organic mechanics of 1 and 2, or the organized criminal underworld of 3 that had the best parts of the series up to that point mixed in. If you're a real fan, then you'll have played the one that plays like Tony Fontana from Scarface got trapped in the Miami Vice universe. Well, going from pseudo New York to pseudo 80s South Florida has a significantly different feel to GTA 3, paralleled by additional gameplay features and a shift in storytelling mechanics, so it's different. In GTA 3, Claude Speed more or less got missions directly from the higher-ups, and his every action influenced the balance of power for each crime boss that he was loyal to, until finally he was empowered enough to go after the woman who was waging war on him and corrupting Liberty City one borough at a time. In Vice City, Tommy Vercetti is essentially set up from the beginning. The head of the Forelli crime family sends him to not Miami to start edging in on the local trade, and to keep him out of their hair. But upon arrival, Tommy is robbed, his future business partners off, and there's like 5 possible people who could have planned the hit on the shipment. So from the very start, Tommy's in debt with virtually no way to recoup his losses, but rather than getting jobs and info straight from everybody you meet, everyone pretty much says, well, I didn't steal your but I'll sure ask a friend of a friend to investigate it for me. Sounds like what happened to me fresh out of college. So Tommy is forced to take more of a proactive role in the first third of the game, tracking down possible leads, looking for answers, and doing several odd jobs to earn money and a rapport with the local underworld. Although in terms of gameplay, this still just means running to a place and starting a mission. Not much IRL investigation, outside of use context clues to see what missions will be more important so that I can do those last. What? I don't have a compulsion. Ew! I just don't want side quests all over the in-game map. And yes, finally! We finally have a map that you don't need to print out or unfold from the box. Took you what, 6 games now, Rockstar? Well wait, Body Harvest had one. 6 games? Super Metroid had you bit for over a decade at this point. Speaking of new and reasonable ways for taking in the world, the graphics have had a major overhaul. Aside from the more tropical environment, there's much more focus on colors and aesthetic style here, to highlight the styles and attitudes of the time. And it certainly is the prettiest of the 3D era. More filters are used to render the world, and models are smoother all around, and character models are far less segmented than before. My guess is, this time they weren't expecting limb removals every other and thus kept most of the body intact. And then there was a violent limb removal near the end of the game anyway, but that was treated as more of a tragic accident than wanton jibbing gore extravaganza. It was also a cool way to connect GTA 3 to Vice City. Aside from the burgeoning real estate agent quest line, interactions with the world are more prevalent. There are outfits to pick up all over town, more interiors for buildings, more boats and planes to utilize, and best of all, the police are no longer time-warping super cops, as our character was at least born in this dimension. Interactions with our character are much more engaging as well, seeing as he talks now. Claude Speed was the strong silent type, always keeping his mouth shut when he wasn't being at, but in an attempt to rectify this mute weirdo mistake, Tommy Vercetti is on the opposite side of the spectrum. He never shuts up, and he says every other sentence. Yeah, this game isn't for kids. You don't even know. Except I do know, Rockstar. It's used for shock value and to show that this game isn't for kids, thereby guaranteeing that it will definitely be bought by kids. And yet, I still find Tommy intriguing. He's a violent but still acts like the new kid on the block, going around making friends and frenemies. Kinda like what happened to me going into college, actually. Which also reminds me, motorcycles are back. You might think that they would have been forgotten in 3 during all the last-minute editorials, but I disagree. I don't think it would have been hard at all to take a car, swap its body out, change the hitbox, add mounting animations, and take away the call ability, and add crash inertia. You even had this in the 2.5D universe, but hey, it's back now. You'd also think they'd be easier to hold on to and handle a little better too, but you'd be wrong. Apparently they weren't added into GTA 3 because Rockstar North are bullheaded perfectionists that wanted motorcycles to be as close as possible to the genuine article. Aww. That's why in GTA Vice City they handle like bicycles covered in WD-40 that go as fast as Sonic the Hedgehog. What? And then one of the developers must have noticed this and brought it up in a meeting, wherein the bike guy said, duh, that's how a dirt bike is supposed to feel. Then the sensible dev made him code something that actually handles like a motorcycle covered in WD-40. So Tommy runs about reconnecting with the world after his long stint in prison. He gets to know a would-be business partner, befriends or gets annoyed by everybody he meets, and then the investigation just kind of ends when Tommy makes friends with everybody and the game goes, this guy did it, I know because he's the one most focused on the trade. Everything does seem to lead to him. See, even Lance figured it out. And then the middle of the game is unlocking more areas and exploring Vice City while you do more favors for these people. Hey, be sure to keep your friends' clothes. You decorate your room with trophies, get to use the latest hardware, vehicles, water physics. I see Claude Speed isn't the only aquaphobe here, is he, Arthur? And then after killing the squattest drug lord ever and his entire army, Tommy is able to buy his house and take over his section of the criminal underworld. The Miami trade being a lot like Roman emperors. Am I right? Yes, I stole that joke. No wonder why Catalina was spanking it up with the Colombian cartel. If not for Claude, who knows what would have happened to Liberty City. After Ricardo and Colonel Cortez are removed from the equation, Tommy starts working on his own criminal network and buying up businesses, doing missions to strengthen his little underworld economy, and assisting in disputes between Cuban and Haitian clans. For all the talk of empires, very little of the economy resource missions actually revolve around. From what I remember, there was an ice cream van front I drove around Little Havana for a bit, a big stash of supplies at the new home base, and some other things I did to acquire for somebody else. I don't know, perhaps Tommy just left it all in the hands of Ken Paul and Ken Lawyerberg, which would explain a few things, but a far larger portion of my funds came from cars for not Simpson's defunct auto business, bending not Steven Spielberg's arm into making high production value, brokering a relationship between a group of rock stars and a gang of violent on motorbikes, robbing a bank dressed as various iterations of Jason Voorhees, and buying a printing press from a kindly Mr. Miyagi type that informs you that this was primarily used to print cash at some point. And from there, just as I was starting to wonder how the story was going to wrap up, Tommy started getting phone calls from Lance on an 80s mobile phone and not a pager, basically saying, I helped you get here. Why aren't you giving me more money and responsibility? Quite frankly, I would, Lance, but you obviously have your head in the wrong place, and when Tommy did trust you not to f*** up again, you f***ed up worse than ever and went to handle it by pouring yourself a glass of scotch back at the mansion that I own and you get to sleep in for a kickback, I think. Talk to my attorney once he gets out of the men's room. Once the game sees that you're raking in the prerequisite amount of cash, Sonny Forelli walks in like he owns the place and demands that Tommy bow down to him. Tommy tells him to f*** off, insinuating that his stint in prison was all Sonny's fault in the first place, whereupon mass carnage ensues and Tommy gets to Claude Speed it up wherever the hell he pleases, after doing a few more side missions, of course. It's a power fantasy again, but as I stated, probably not the best one to start with. All the 80s flavoring and intricate missions and cash, it has much more depth than GTA 3, but talking purely from a games as narrative standpoint, GTA 3 didn't need all these extra layers, the same way that GTA 2 didn't need a scripted story. GTA 2 was an organic sandbox that reacted to the player. GTA 3 was sort of that, plus a load of character vignettes that showed Claude Speed his way into owning the whole city. GTA Vice City is not that. It is a load of character vignettes and playable mechanics that show Tommy Vercetti building up a criminal empire inside of a semi-responsive sandbox. It's an expanded version of GTA 3, but a very different game for its mechanics, functions, and the factions of the map not reacting so much to each of your missions. But for all of its mechanics, it's still a Rockstar sandbox game. GTA 3 with better visuals, more relatable story, and more references and Easter eggs. You know what? This is the game for the GTA fans. It's just not the game for the real Grand Theft Auto fans. Aloha wahine amenekene, hekieke makewao 14,000. I am really sorry if I did not say that correctly. I used roughly 3 different auto-translators in order to get something semi-decent. And today I will be reviewing the crazy blowout of the Grand Theft Auto series, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Didn't Yahtzee already do a video on this one?
No, he didn't. Yahtzee recently, depending on how quickly I can get this video out, did a video on the hot coffee controversy, an incident that was as much Rockstar's fault as much as it was a PC modding community's fault, from which a bunch of Ken Rosenbergs probably profited at some point, allegedly. In this video, you will hear my backward introduction to the game, as well as my over-intellectualized take on the game that redefined f***ing amazing in the hearts of so many gamers. Like so many games in the Grand Theft Auto series, it's really easy to get distracted, but a little warning for San Andreas, it's long, and I mean seriously long. Where GTA 3 and Vice City each could be fired off in a week, or conceivably a weekend, San Andreas took me 2 months to get through all the story missions with minimal goofing off or secret hunting time. What? I kept and I needed to keep stocking up and starting over. As for how I was originally introduced to it, I didn't have the intro DVD in the Trilogy collection, and all I knew going in was that it was more of a street simulator than a game about organized crime. I think it hit more of an edging middle ground on that subject, but I'll get to that. I turned on the game, watched the logos and licensing agreements pop up, and almost rage quit the game at the introductory cutscene. This quest to understand anything. You, I'm out, I'm leaving. I just lost the game! For the less experienced millennials out there, that is a triggering moment. That is what it is to have a volatile mental reaction to something. And you know what? I didn't sue Rockstar over it. I didn't crusade against a game I hadn't even played yet. I had a good yell, hit the heavy bag for a few minutes, had dinner, and got on with my life. As I've already stated in my first GTA review, I first knew the series as violent games for overbearing violent skid marks that struggled to process oxygen. Most of the kids who openly talked about Grand Theft Auto as a series that I knew in middle school were bags that terrorized anyone they could and spoke in this mismatched, thick Chicano wannabe gangsta dialect. So in the opening moments of the game, instead of taking in the effect of Carl Johnson returning to pay his respects to his mother and a broken family, all I could think about was using my medallion to take a leap back and help myself go my former classmates to. This was the game that they were talking about. This had to be the one that they were emulating so much. Doesn't make it any less good. It just goes to show that I was once surrounded by assholes. And after dinner, I popped the game back in, prepared to live in a violent, white male-dominated society that doesn't give a shit about my safe space. And then I started role-playing as a black man in an ultra-violent, white male-dominated society that I knew couldn't give less of a shit about what my safe space might even be. Did you catch that one, man bun? How about you, Triggered? Hey, too hypocritical to be a punk rock star. Did that message come across? Now that I've insulted everybody who probably never played this game, ever, let's start roasting the rest of the entire gaming population. When I said the game was seriously long, I meant it. And it was the first point in the series I was having serious doubts as to whether or not I would finish it off. Not that it was boring at all, just certain parts kept getting harder and harder near the end. If you really think about it, GTA Vice City took roughly 9 months to make, albeit with a sandbox that didn't seriously reshape its loyalty dynamics after every mission path. This game took years to make, and with all that much more time to really develop comes improvements to the graphics, physics, and game mechanics, but a host of more glitches, story drops, and design flaws. Like other GTA games from the 3D era, it appears to have heavy inspiration from several movies. Here, I'd say it takes inspiration from Boys in the Hood, Ocean's 11, Hackers, The Big Lebowski, Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, and weirdly, a bit of the X-Files. Here's a hot tip for gamers out there. Do something else for a while after finishing this game, and whatever you do, do not visit the real-world equivalents of the places portrayed in the series right after playing it. Right after I finished the game, I ended up taking a trip to Las Vegas in California with my grandparents, and when I woke up in the middle of the strip in broad daylight, it was like my GTA reflexes kicked in. I wasn't triggered, of course, but I actually found myself actively looking for cops to avoid, and Black Elvis impersonators, remembering robbing the various facsimiles of the casinos that I was now passing. So by Yahtzee's own definition, the game has a level of immersion. But back to the game. Well, we can start with the first thing you're likely to notice. It doesn't have a proper beginning. It's not an in medias res start, but your allies start talking about the setting and relating disputes, and there's a throwaway line about a green saber I didn't really get until later, and kind of a plot hole involving what Tenpenny had over Smokin' Ryder, and why a wormy lawyer is running a casino. It turns out these missing bits were explained in a short DVD of CJ tearing it up in Liberty City, working with Joey, and other characters and their interactions that were yet to be introduced. It's interesting, certainly, but why does this exist? GTA 2 had a short film as well, but that's still able to be downloaded from Rockstar Games, and it was made in a totally different medium to the game. This new short uses in-engine graphics and 3D models that are already available in the game, that it is supposed to be introducing. Why not just add 20 minutes to the intro sequence of the game? I suppose I should feel lucky that it wasn't part of another expansion pack, or something. Then the game starts its easy intro missions, wherein CJ reconnects with his childhood friends, and sees the neighborhood's shift in power among the violent street. Trey Styles? Never heard of him. As per Ryder's request, I went out to customize my character, bought some clothes, got a jerry curl. I thought it was going to end up looking like Michael Jackson's famous jerry curl, but after the haircut and long hours at the gym, my CJ ended up looking like a really buff Lionel Richie for most of the game. And after I reconnected with most everybody, the high one, the greedy one, stealing rap lyrics for a no-talent hack, Kendall and her Hispanic banger boyfriend, who isn't part of the violent Aztecas, edging in on western Los Santos territory. Then after all that, the game threw out the worst design flaw I have ever seen in a video game. It tutorializes how to initiate fair and forcefully take over Los Santos streets a few blocks at a time. This allows you to earn more reputation points and start defending territories from your violent neighbors, whose siblings and cousins must be fine with you after all their relatives, because the next day they're all ready to join the crew. Kind of a mixed message there, isn't it? This in turn allows you to recruit more members and take over more of the streets. But immediately after teaching you how to do this, the game takes it away from you. And even after you're allowed back into your childhood neighborhood, you're still unable to do it. At no point are you actually allowed to do this until the Grove Street family is reestablished near the end of the game. So you temporarily kicked me out of not Compton, split up the family, put my brother in. What exactly am I supposed to do on this side of Mount Chiliad, Rockstar?
More character vignettes that will take you on a path of kind of not really redemption and force you to grow as a person, build a network of criminal resources, and learn the power of family and trusting others.
You're serious. So, if I'm remembering correctly, after a mission for the Crooked Cops, you get to meet this dirty hippie guy voiced by Peter Fonda, and Cesar's cousin, Catalina, the main villain from GTA 3, who I tried to the first chance I got just to avenge Claude's speed in the near future. But the game wanted so badly for her to be my girlfriend. Ew! Then Claude came in from out of nowhere and stole her out from under me? Well, I guess that's how not mute boy meets sadistic girl. Then in the same breath, the game put me in contact with Woozy, a leader of one of the Triad families. The Triads? Those relentless machines from GTA 3 who hunt you down from the very start? I'm about to a Triad leader right between the eyes, unless he gives me a garage, and some cash, and protection. I'm beginning to think that Claude Speed isn't the good guy in GTA 3, and he seems so trustworthy for a violent serial. After this, CJ set up shop in not San Francisco. The truth sends you out to some more guys to start a small criminal enterprise or two. Then you get to meet a secret agent type, all the while getting strong-armed into doing Tenpenny's dirty work, and dropping in to chat with the Triad Prince and his entourage. Then you go to a driving school. Okay, gonna stop you right there. Why do I need to go to stunt driving school now of all times? A majority of the racing missions have already come up, and only the class in speeding through traffic was even helpful.
Well, it'll help you with cars and missions for a new garage.
Yeah, I didn't really need Stunt Driving 101 to tail people and to operate a crane, so... Then I do some missions for Secret Agent Mike Torino, getting supplies and providing backup for people in the field, which is in the US. Starting to think this wasn't totally legal. But hey, next he has you buy an airstrip and go to flight school. Okay, gonna stop you right there again. Why did you make me play a prolonged game of flight sim after the 2 hardest plane missions in the entire game, Rockstar?
Well, it'll help you fly planes in like 4 or 5 more missions later on in the game.
I'm beginning to think this wasn't planned well.
Oh, really? What makes you such a expert?
Well, there's the missing intro, the warfare mechanic, the stunt school, the flight school, the entire district in the northwest corner of the map that's fully modeled and has nothing to do with the game. Seriously, in the far northwest part of the island, there's this beautifully rendered metropolitan district with like 2 pickups and a totally optional boating school, and that's all. Then you do like 2 flight missions, steal proof of alien life from Area 69 for not Tommy Chong Easy Rider over here, and Woozy invites you out to Las Venturas. Turns out the mob are on his back, and after dealing with a few problems, you get to meet Rosie, and Ken Rosenberg, Tommy's lawyer and a real link to GTA 80s is here, in the flesh. Hey, if you didn't see the DVD intro, Kent Paul and Ken Rosenberg were a pleasant surprise. Turns out the mob are all over their backs too, and CJ starts forming a plan to rob the not Villaggio, wherein he has to and then rescue a member of the Sindaco Mafioso, and gain intel by looking into records and working with Salvatore Leone and Maria. You're just making it rain on your fans now, aren't you, Rockstar? After getting acquainted with his former fence's father, CJ robs the casino, splits the money with the Triads, and is finally free to sort out his own problems, helping a rapper whose life he helps send down the tubes, being a dirty cop, and getting his brother out of prison by stealing a few more things for the secret agent. And when Sweet returns to see how buff Lionel Richie is doing, he just gives a "what the hell is wrong with you" talk to CJ and demands that we go back to the hood and take back our lives, which I was really on buff Lionel Richie's side about. Why would I go back there? I have unlimited access to every non-boring part of the state. I could buy you a brand new house, pay off the mortgage, special order you a car, and still have enough cash left over to wallpaper our old neighborhood in 47s. But even after building a criminal empire and meeting Rockstar's entire cast of the Godfellas tribute and fixing all our lives, things just won't be complete without home and Grove Street being back on top. So do I finally do that thing we—
Go out and do that thing I told you to do last month!
Uh-huh. And so, ideally, you rebuild your family's home and legacy before taking on Tenpenny and the traitors who wrecked your life. It was a tale of redemption all along. Kind of a mixed message when you think about it, though. Where Boys in the Hood's whole point was violent begets violence that will consume innocent people's lives, and a little bit of animalistic typically come from parents who won't teach or discipline their kids. This game's message is the answer to violence is teamwork, and possibly some more violence. But in the end, it is a power fantasy. It's a game. Games are supposed to be fun. But for sake, don't get games like this for your children. Please, for me, stop leaving Rockstar games alone with your children. There's so much more I could mention too. The body modding and mechanics affect your stats and some gameplay, your interactions with people, even the missions you're able to go on. Missions that you do affect the map and even your access to it. It's kind of sad when you realize that GTA San Andreas would end up out RPGing several next-gen RPGs even today. I hear a lot of things about the train mission, but I thought it was fine. Finished it after 2 or 3 goes and moved on. I don't know. It was good though. I guess I'll just have to get myself some hot coffee. Ahoy, damy a panowie, jestem stracny, ditia 14 seeds. And welcome back to the ZP Parody Variety Hour. Now everyone knows what game comes next in the sequence after 1, London, 2, 3, Florida, California tri-state areas. Aren't you also supposed to go 2.5, 2 3/4, and Florida and a half? No, because this is my show and I'm skipping them. What am I supposed to say anyway? An attempted demake of 3 with smooth gameplay despite a choppy frame rate, and a protagonist that might actually be Michael DeSanta. Next GTA 3 with a brighter color scheme, and we have motorcycles now with a little Pulp Fiction feel to it as well. Followed by more Vice City, except the protagonist is more reasonable and wants to get out of the trade. He loses his love, and Lance has an arc from nerdy-looking homebody to 80s drug dealer. Oh, you'd love for me to stick to the 3D universe, wouldn't you? With its power fantasy story arcs and its array of characters that we know and love. No, I'm moving on into the next one, GTA 4. And I know what someone's going to say, probably before I'm done praising and retroactively blowing off the mobile titles.
Yahtzee did a video on this.
Well, Yahtzee didn't finish the video game before he made that video, and I did, and it's interquels, so prepare yourself for a long one. What Yahtzee said, in so many words, was that the game featured boring intros, cops too easy to get away from, first quarter of the game was all tutorials, incredibly long gameplay time, when it gets going it's really good, ancillary sandbox entertainment bits were weird, the friend system was weirdly done, and gritty realism up the and while all of this is true, and I have no direct rebuttals, I have a few more things for it to shove up its Now, roughly 4 years after GTA 4's release, I first got into the series with GTA 3, right as hype for GTA 4 was out. I might have arrived to the party late, but by late 2013, I had sampled the 2.5D era enough to know what was going on, played through the 3D generation, and a demake, and I felt I was more than proto-hipster enough to take it head on. While the world was just about to get their fat, air-conditioned hands on GTA 5, I was going to see what happened to Claude after winning the city. To the Leone family without Salvatore. I was going to build up a whole new criminal empire and possibly go toe-to-toe with Claude's speed in the city I'd come to know so well. So I fired up the game, gave my cousin the slip, and my first thoughts, wow, look at what they did to Liberty City. And my second thought, what the f have you done to Liberty City? Yes, it appears my aspirations to become a proto-hipster had come back to shove a few things in me this time. The city was now in HD, gritty and colorful enough to show pseudo New York in all of its glory. However, after opening up the in-game map, I realized that instead of modeling the countryside, adding in more island districts, or adding in more landmarks, this was a totally new version of not New York. As I played on further, there was no mention of any of the previous crime families or mention of an allegedly mute man being the most feared person in Liberty City. But looking around, I saw tons of posters, doodads, and all kinds of Easter eggs to the previous games in the series. Even a whole street painted with GTA 3 artworks. After looking it up, I came to find out that at some infant stage of development, they were thinking of HD-ifying and adding to the 3D era city. But after several revisions, what we ended up with is a new city, jam-packed with Easter egg nods to the previous series, and Rockstar apparently has a headcanon that all the previous characters Zaibatsu no longer needed free-range maniacs do their dirty work, or something. There are these graffiti scribblings you can find scrawled on walls in random places throughout the city, one of them just outside of Roman's first apartment, and it's a schizophrenic shrine to the protagonist's past. On one, I could just make out what looks like Rip Claude. Really? Rockstar? Claude Speed braved the 2.5 dimension to make it to the 3D universe, and then what? In some game we never saw, Claude threw a invited Phil Cassidy and Joey Leone, all their known associates, and fired up the dimension hopping machine, and then they all slowly one by one in this universe because they couldn't process HD oxygen? No wonder why he never talked in GTA 3. Just getting used to 3D oxygen must have been a nightmare. Okay, so Rockstar pulled a DC multiverse. Again. No reason to judge them for that. I'll just judge them based on the slew of other things. I haven't looked into the source code, but I think in GTA 4 a ton of objects are physics objects all the time, 24/7. More to the point, I think everything is the same kind of physics object. Don't take my word for it though, but going from the swift, well-balanced CJ, or CJ Ritchie, to GTA 4, Nico Bellic's movement speed, acceleration, and supposed weight feels sluggish and heavy like a fat man carrying sacks of bricks, which is just so natural when you're playing as an underweight former soldier. It's just so natural that cars have just too far a turning radius, and cameras now stare directly at the back of your car like a track racing game, instead of the proper angle to see the road like in every other 3D GTA title ever. Also, a few of the cars will go into a drift as soon as you hit the handbrake, despite going, what, 5 miles an hour? You know what else feels natural? Dark and gritty realism in Grand Theft Auto. Now, everything Yahtzee has ever said on the subject still stands, and it isn't like GTA can't do dark and gritty, but I think the point is all the more compounded by the fact that new Liberty City is packed with references and attitudes meant to lampoon the real world. I honestly can't tell if it's distracting or just another layer of flavor text when entire droves of people can't seem to find peace or happiness, and yet every other part of society doesn't seem to care or even notice, because they're all too busy buying into franchises and staring at cups of coffee all day. Meta-narrative? What the hell is that? That's kind of the problem, though. The main problem that I have with GTA 4 Volume 1 is that it's trying to be mafia. Everything, even the crazy bits, seem to lead into more taciturn, gritty consequences, until it doesn't anymore because people are jerks and you should just look after you and yours. But we all know where that thinking leads, don't we? An even more taciturn, gritty ending sequence. It's both a mixed message and a jarring shift in tone. Not that GTA isn't already packed with mixed messages. Since GTA 3, they've aspired to have some kind of anti-message. In 3, you were fighting a addict and the spread of a new called Spank. But you could always pick up off the streets like Eminem dropped by the sandbox fairy, Gee, I wonder why they called him Claude Speed. In Vice City, Tommy never took but certainly trafficked a lot of them. Well, as long as you don't count being poisoned by a Haitian voodoo priestess and a Vietnam War vet. No joke, that actually happens. And CJ was also sober as long as he had a choice in the matter. In all the previous titles, and in a little of GTA 4, the message has been, tough situations must be met with violence and criminal aspirations. The message of GTA 4 Volume 1 on the whole, crime does not pay. Nico's story starts out, he gets off the boat, and we see some diamonds being baked into a cake for no reason at all. We learn, through endless talkie bits brought up piecemeal throughout the game, that Nico was a soldier from Yugoslavia, but his whole regiment was ambushed, leaving 2 other possible survivors, and he's been on the warpath to find out which one of them was a traitor. He took up some smuggling job with a crime family, pulled a Major Han Solo, and eventually made it to Liberty City to continue the hunt. Nico's journey after that is a little grit-tastic, but I do commend Rockstar for trying to put together an original story centered around original characters, rather than put together another bunch of vignettes around a violent straight man. So from here, Nico confronts Roman about his lies, off a lone shark, makes nice with the Russian mafia, and finally sets up shop on the next island. From that point onward, the game gets really amazingly good, like Yahtzee said. But, just to elaborate, the first quarter of the game is almost all tutorial missions, and not the well-designed tutorial missions from 5, wherein you learn maybe 4 mechanics at a time on the way to cause more mayhem. Here, there's a single mission for 1 or 2 mechanics at a time. It gets a little interesting later on, but I already know how a storefront works. I already understand the concept of using a cell phone. Oh, you set up a blind date so we could steal a car from a guy. Well, at least that's 2 concepts down. My cousin's muscle car friend is gay and a pathological liar. Got it. While the tutorials were boring, I actually didn't mind the hanging out with friends system. It was something else to do if I wasn't feeling like tearing New Liberty a new speed hole, and it afforded favors and bonuses from people with whom you're best friends. It's just the game keeps trying to crowbar in these unwindy sequences whenever the game feels like you've been having too much excitement. What really surprised me was how reactive many of these missions really were. Some of them even end with a mini moral choice. Only the final 3 levels really carry a large amount of weight for the story ending, but most moral choices, if there is one, just end the mission with whatever you feel is best or worst to do, potentially affecting the world in numerous ways. Not terribly reactive, that, but it's still sad that GTA 4 still can out-RPG some modern RPGs, and so, after tying up all the loose ends with the Russians, the new leader turns out to be a violent snake and hands you over to Nico's Job of the Hut that he done soloed. Nico moves into the next safe house, and from here the game begins proper, as Nico goes on a rampage just getting bumped from organization to organization to do for each one. He rubs shoulders with the Liberty City Underground, crosses paths with a biker and a resourceful doorman, all in his quest for revenge. He ends up working for an auto theft ring, some dealers, the Irish Mafia, some new school OG type and his ex-con friend. Then Nico ends up working for the not CIA and infiltrating the actual Mafia. The final 5th of the game is helping Powerful Man A kill Loose Ends X, and then getting bumped up to Power Man B, killing Loose Ends Y, and possibly Power Man A at some point. Repeat. Finally, after strategically executing the cluster of back alley deals gone wrong, the not CIA people fly in Nico's intended target, and you need to choose either to kill him or let him go free. After this, Dmitri, the Russian snake, brokers a deal between the Mafia and some other associates he decided to screw over, and the final ending is decided based upon whether you choose to rob these people for the Mafia, or say quit and Dmitri Reskalov anyway. But in the end, at least one beloved character will always and we will all learn that crime does not pay. It's not terrible, certainly impressive to look at, and it shows a little originality, but it's also overlong, gritty. The beginning is packed with so much boring and ancillary bullshit that it's practically impenetrable, and getting used to the controls is paint-guzzlingly awkward. Face it, adding a physics engine doesn't make things instantly better, and when the dynamics don't feel natural, you change them. Change the weight or coefficients of a single type of object or character, so that way we don't feel like we're playing as a fat man. There's more I could bring up, like the diamond plot device that goes nowhere, forcing wall cover mechanics into a sandbox game with a perfectly useful crouch button, loading clothing skins takes an unbearable length of time, or how about the one car racing mission that will fail you out of nowhere for being too good at driving? Yeah, there was this one mission that I kept failing because apparently I was supposed to get there seconds after the guy I was supposed to be meeting. So why was this a race at all? Just put down an objective marker. Also, I can understand not adding in jetpacks. With these controls, you'd probably scoot forward by leveling up Nico's fart stats, but you didn't add planes in again, Rockstar. I mean, are you still nervous about or something? There's one airport, several places where you could have added landing strips or aircraft carriers, and no planes. But we have a ton of high-speed helicopters,
But we couldn't fit an airstrip in among this city.
yeah, that's why you add it. Or don't clutter up potential landing spaces with more buildings and debris.
Oh, what do you know? The city's too small to add planes.
Vice City had amphibious planes, and it was half of, if not a third the size of this.
Well, it wouldn't be fun to...
Nope, you're totally right. Can't imagine having fun with this. That's why there's like 40 mods for this exact thing. Look, the game gets better later on. There's so much to do, so many of the friends and Easter eggs are so memorable, I find myself coming back to it years later just to take in the city, and take a few friends out for movies and Also, there's a way to unlock Claude Speed's clothes if you decide to keep the Kingpin rather than his reformed member friend. Just a shame that loading new outfits is unbearably long, but it's so sluggish and try-hardy most of the time that I find it hard to call it a Grand Theft Auto game. More like Mafia 1 if it was heavy, 4 times as long, and the city was a million times more detailed. That is, until... Sons of Anarchy! I mean, Lost in... The first primarily biker-themed chapter of Grand Theft Auto. Full Throttle ain't got nothing on this. Took you, what, 6.5 years, Rockstar, since that short stint in Vice City? Except, unlike Vice City, the bikers are a little bit more manageable. Crashes are just as controller-snapping and hilarious as it was in Vice City, but the Lost MC don't polish their bikes with bricks of lard, and they make it look like there's a dynamic hierarchy in the club. There isn't. Johnny is constantly the VP and de facto leader whenever anything goes wrong. The Lost and Damned expansion shows a portion of GTA 4's story from Johnny's perspective. His story pretty much revolves around Billy, the old president who just returned from rehab, prison, delete where appropriate, Elizabeta, the full-bodied Hispanic kingpin, Thomas Stubbs, a rich suit with connections, and Ashley Butler. Johnny is apparently running the club well enough, riding in formation, extorting money, and bikes and whatnot, when the old president of the club returns and promptly starts running things into the ground. Immediately, he has us retrieve his bike from the Angels of Johnny, that's a no-brainer. If your boss is meant to come back, you don't just let a rival right off with his property. But Billy uses this as an excuse to start a war with this rival biker and steal their... This leads to some trouble with some dirty cops, and Elizabeta arranges a deal to get rid of the with Nico as backup, which is where Johnny meets Nico in the first place. The same deal goes wrong, just like before, but this gets the attention of Thomas Stubbs, a benefactor with need of muscle. Billy gets arrested in a whole other deal gone wrong. Johnny attempts to keep things running by traitorous faction within the club and doing more missions for Elizabeta. In another twist of fate, Johnny is tasked by not Tony Cipriani with a stack of diamonds, then is paired up with Nico again to sell them to the Jewish mob. But when that deal goes bad too, Johnny opts the money, which makes the first mob boss, who set up the deal, a little cranky. And in the middle of all of this, Johnny keeps running off to bail out his toxic ex out of trouble. I mean, geez, Johnny, you run the gauntlet trying to save Ashley from addicts and then need to rescue her from a... She's proven to be more of a detriment to you than a liability at this point. Sure, you two have history and she's useful for a little information, but this girl needs rehab more than your former boss did, and you know it! But just when it looks like the world might be coming down on the Lost, between the Mafia and rival Stubb walks in and hands them the news that none of their direct rivals are doing too well, and that their real problem is their old boss turning state's evidence after his latest arrest. The final mission is a high-octane biker fest as you break into a prison exercise yard, massacre everything in sight, cap Billy Gray, and then massacre your way back out again. The whole thing was dark, gritty reality, but Johnny and his gang react to everything so proactively. Yes, the subject matter is the same taxing, grim series of events that Nico faced in the middle of GTA 4, but rather than dealing with Nico's task-turn reactions to getting over, Johnny dives headfirst into the next mission, either because he's duty-bound to do so, or as some vengeful, bombastic means of reaping victory in the cold world that is New Liberty City. Johnny's final act in the story, after telling his old boss to go to is breaking it off with Ashley, leaving her in whatever mess she's in before disbanding the Lost Clubhouse, effectively regaining control over his own life. It was short, sweet, over the top, with internal and external victories all around. I didn't think GTA 4 could get any closer to its roots than this. Well, not until... The Ballad of Tony! Finally, a game that feels like Grand Theft Auto. No, I don't mean the real GTA story that we finally got with the lost chapters over here, but a richer, more colorful world, and a control scheme that actually feels like I'm controlling a person, and a jump height that's higher than 1.5 feet. Wow, it almost feels like Rockstar has finally mastered the physics engine that they allegedly customized themselves. The story, on the other hand, is just a mess, taking place during about the halfway point of Nico's story to the end of GTA 4. Luis Lopez is the loyal, tough guy bouncer who works for Tony Prince, a nightclub owner in serious debt to some oblique sector of the mob. Things start out business as usual, Luis trying to balance his work, home, and social life, when Tony starts trying to expand his network again. You pick up contact with Maury, the short, overcompensatory Pat, that in turn made his brother overly insecure and ostentatious. That explains Brucey and his behavior with Roman and Nico, as well as Yusuf, the ostentatious Middle Eastern businessman. And really, how has the IIA and FIB not pegged this guy as a yet? Virtually all of his missions include stealing military-grade hardware and using it to take out his adversaries or blowing up something. Sure, he has blow up some supposed but then he sends the attack helicopter to his father, who as far as I can tell looks like a Saudi prince. Then, coming back to Tony, we find him more stressed out than ever, caught in a self-destructive spiral thanks to his debts and his toxic friends, who couldn't give a about him, save for a reputation they can mooch off of. They even convinced Tony to buy some driving plot some diamonds, so that he can sell them off and have some spare cash around. Immediately, they get by bikers. That's how they ended up in Johnny and Nico's lives, and Luis later them back. That's why the Jewish mob deal went south, and Rockstar gets to make a joke about how they out-Pulp Fictioned Pulp Fiction. After trading the diamonds away, Luis ends up getting in touch with Nico's Jabba the Hutt type, and helping him out with some dirty cops. But it turns out the diamonds that everybody's been chasing after were his, and now Jabba's pulling out all the Boba Fetts on this one. Tony, feeling more pressure than ever, attempts to commit but is saved by Luis because it's not over, and your life isn't worthless, and I care about you, and just kiss him, you fool! And of course, Tony and his aggressive bodyguard go on a quest to Jabba the Hutt. I think they were trying to go for something like San Andreas, except more relatable, with a healthy dose of side boss. Oh, don't get touchy with me. The vanilla version of GTA 4 has a built-in dating simulator for various criminals that you meet, and an actual dating sim if you want Nico to do something with his weekend. And when Tony starts falling apart, his mooch friends start calling him like it was going out of style. Also, everyone touts the Claude Speed clothing Easter egg, but a majority of the game, Luis is wearing 8-Ball's clothes. Did no one put those two together? Luis owning the only Letterman jacket in the city didn't stand out to anyone else? Actually, there are a lot of analogous themes and characters here, the more I think about it. The base jumping, fight club, and bouncer side jobs actually add a little bit to the gameplay, and the scenes are just tasteless and out of place considering the hot coffee fiasco. Overall, it was amazingly fun, but it just feels weird that GTA 4 went from crime does not pay to face your crime problems head on to bouncer, urban depression, diamonds, extortion, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Konnichiwa, kodomo tachi wa watashi no kageyaki o akiraka ni shite imasu. What Yahtzee said. No, seriously, what Yahtzee said in his video that he did, and I'm totally not aping. Aside from handing the escapist a few more views, my general opinion is that I agreed with that video that I'm mentioning. Therefore, you don't need to mention it, because I know it exists, and it doesn't warrant more mentioning. Don't worry, I have several add-ons, and like 2 whole rebuttals, and the story, well, the story is play the thing. And for that matter, play all of them. GTA 5 is very straightforward, HD enough to satisfy most graphics, even on console, and isn't nearly as difficult to play as, say, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which took me about the same amount of time to play through the story. There's a ton of missions in 5, but the game is more laid back and easier to get through than running the gauntlet or shooting through an obstacle course. It's more like a ton of mini-adventure romps than a slog through Nico's latest screamy fight. The one thing I have noticed, and I will continue to remind everyone because I can remember them, the main characters in the HD generations are pretty similar to the characters in the 3D universe. There's the professional one with a past and a knack for making friends, the loudmouth, charismatic psych, and then there's the ethnic one with a story of homecoming and redemption despite also being some kind of maniac.
Oh, but Trevor is more like Claude Speed because he looks good in Claude's clothes, and he represents the wacky 3D generation, and Michael also wears a great pink suit.
Anyone looks good in Claude's outfit. Even I look good in Claude's outfit. Trevor is a charismatic dreamer building an industry of crime. Michael is a professional bank robber doing anything that satisfies his fiscal wants or his hate, whichever one decided to come first. Franklin seems to be a student in search of a mentor, and sort of goes through a more wholesome transformation compared to what happened to his fanfiction father, the 3D universe cast basically being in Rockstar's eyes, unless old would garner more sales. Now that I think about it, Grove Street appears to be a very minor focus in Franklin's life. CJ and Franklin both dreamed of reaching the stars and leaving their home base, but on Franklin's return, there's not much put into the characters or their relationships here. Don't get me wrong, if this had been GTA 4, we would have played TJ Underfoot, getting revenge for being held back in a world that was simultaneously trying to channel Boys in the Hood, the Warriors novel, and Don't Be a Menace all over the background. But there's not much reconnecting besides, I'm sorry I'm trying to move on with my life, but our old friend is very obviously a traitor. The outright one thing I have against the original review is the flying controls. After GTA 5 first came out, everyone was complaining about the flight controls for planes and helicopters, but I honestly don't get it. It must have been a reaction to a bad port, or one of those the first year of our game is a prolonged beta test situations that the PC master race seemed to love so much. On the 360, the flight controls were ideal for the capabilities on display. Turning, gliding, and handling were a breeze. It's almost like, in flight, Rockstar just forgot to code real-life annoyances like the exact coefficients of gravity, turbulence, or unwanted drag. If there's anything in GTA 5 I have a problem with, it's turning Laszlo into even more of a joke than he was. Going back to GTA 2, they had voice-acted talk shows in the car radios, and from 3 onward, they had this and several licensed songs. Laszlo really hit his stride in the 3D universe, playing as a radio DJ straight man to a cast of wacky characters. It was always a joy to hear Laszlo trying to keep a show going while the guest personalities derailed reality itself for their chance at 15 minutes. In GTA 4, he sort of lost that shtick, opting for more of a look at me, I'm famous personality on the radio. I didn't really get it until I saw him in 5 as a knockoff Ryan Seacrest, playing as a celebrity bag to be bullied and humiliated, gone from the days where he once was a voice of reason and brazen truth. Oh yeah, and that one bit at the beginning. Why the did you kill Johnny Klebitz? Better yet, why the is he back with Ashley Butler? At the end of GTA 4, Johnny takes back his life, breaks it off with this worthless and addicted ex. At the beginning of 5, we see Johnny pleading like a with Trevor Phillips because Trevor just got done pounding her over a kitchen sink. In a post-hot coffee world, Rockstar. And he still loves her. Are you Rockstar? They broke up, and a major theme of the Lost and expansion was getting away from this little toxic sucker. And then Trevor him, the best GTA protagonist from GTA 4, ends up as skull fragments on the boot heels of a lowlife that would make not Simpson look like Mother Teresa. Why? The rest of the game easily frames Trevor as the least likable protagonist. Were you trying to get us to hate him for Johnny? That feeling sort of dampens when you simultaneously establish that Johnny, the most proactive protagonist in GTA 4, has now become a simpering little You're lucky the rest of the game is an exciting thrill ride. The ending isn't bad. Just to elaborate on Yahtzee's excellent point, it gives you 3 endings to choose from. There's the sensible one, where you kill your mentor to appease the powers that be and everything keeps spinning. The GTA 4 one, where you kill the poor helpless maniac, the hypocrite gets to go free, and a billionaire with a private army is constantly hanging over your shoulders. And the one that GTA 5 was actually leading up to. So how do you follow this one up, Rockstar? Do we get to see another character's story? Or 3 cameos from GTA 4 having a new adventure? Actually, I think I'll make an online sort of prequel, where people can either do some races, something random, or heist missions for a bunch of characters from 4 and 5. You. Hey, you. You wouldn't know quality if it was you off right now, you single-player console peasant. Get the hell off my RAM cards, Rockstar, and get over yourself. You have generations of games, inspirations to pull from, and what you made is basically GTA 5 with more about online, going on challenge missions and new heists. GTA Online is certainly more of GTA 5, and therefore carries the market value of GTA 5, which is busters. But this isn't your best. Even GTA 5 wasn't your best. It's just too bad that you wasted the utterly unique characters, dynamic loyalty systems, and blatant parody powers on Bully Scholarship Edition, and Laszlo Seacrest.
No, everyone else loves the online gameplay. You're no GTA fan.
Are you kidding? I'm the greatest GTA fan that you'll ever see. I played all of them at some point, and made it a point to know the series as a whole, so that I could have a greater appreciation of the games than hype-chasing squeaker keyboard junkies like you. And I'll prove that I'm the greatest GTA fan in the world, or I'll retroactively go back and change out the language to my usual intro in all of my GTA Total Explanation videos. What the hell are you doing here? Oh, just fulfilling a promise.
You know the rules, and so do I. Say goodbye.
Hola, niños y niñas de todas las edades. Jarrett Ban Agus Urshle. Ahoy, dame, a panove. Should I go into the conspiracy theory about how Claude's speed is a time-traveling and that's why all the games, except for the first one, take place on an island chain? Well, Grand Theft Auto isn't just a game or two, it's a franchise, and a very segmented franchise. GTA 2 was really the first one to embrace a single character, Claude Speed, and island chains as its setting. GTA 2 comes off more like do whatever you feel like too. Just got real. But with Looney Tunes level action and a massive tongue-in-cheek like you just walked in on your cousin kissing Gene Simmons. I'll cover Claude more in a later episode, but suffice to say that the main character is established as an amoral who may or may not look vaguely like Elvis. His interactions and missions would seem to feel more like skirmishes or busy work for organized crime and not more variations of do this random thing or I'll rip your eyes out, Arthur. Yes, there was a video released of Claude in an alternate costume tearing up the town, doing missions, and picking off Zaibatsu Corporation enough for them to send out a hitman. As I mentioned in my previous video, Claude Speed was the protagonist of GTA 2, a violent path that allegedly looked like Elvis, and GTA 3 was meant to have a customized player character. But because of the time crunch, the character that we got is a silent, but not mute, man who looks vaguely like Elvis, and he's dressed as an alternate costume for Claude Speed from GTA 2 the movie. And both the source code and later games in the series refer to this character as Claude, and Rockstar won't officially comment on whether or not they're the same person. The main argument against this stems from the fact the time of Anywhere USA in GTA 2 was supposed to be either in 1999 or 2014-ish. So in 2001 in GTA 3, Claude has either gone from urban mercenary to street urchin all over again, or Claude has to be like 14 in GTA 3, to which I reply, get! GTA 2 has sci-fi weapons! What's to say Speed Racer here didn't find a time machine at Zaibatsu or hop into another dimension? I mean, really, it's only like a half a step up. Actually, that could cover something else in GTA 4, and in the end, you blow up the major villain, take out anyone else who would have done you wrong, and you own the freaking city. So I fired up the game, gave my cousin the slip, and my first thoughts, wow, look at what they did to Liberty City. And my second thought, what the f*** have you done to Liberty City? This was a totally new version of not New York. As I played on further, there was no mention of any of the previous crime families or mention of an allegedly mute man being the most feared person in Liberty City. But looking around, I saw tons of posters, doodads, and all kinds of Easter eggs to the previous games in the series. Even a whole street painted with GTA 3 artworks. After looking it up, I came to find out that at some infant stage of development, they were thinking of HD-ifying and adding to the 3D-era city. But after several revisions, what we ended up with is a new city, jam-packed with Easter egg nods to the previous series, and Rockstar apparently has a headcanon that all the previous characters when Zaibatsu no longer needed free-range maniacs do their dirty work. Or something. There are these graffiti scribblings you can find scrawled on walls in random places throughout the city, one of them just outside of Roman's first apartment, and it's a schizophrenic shrine to the protagonist's past. On one, I could just make out what looks like Rip Claude. Really? Rockstar? Claude Speed braved the 2.5 dimension to make it to the 3D universe, and then what? In some game we never saw, Claude threw a ticker, invited Phil Cassidy and Joey Leone, all their known associates, and fired up the dimension hopping machine, and then they all slowly one by one in this universe because they couldn't process HD oxygen? No wonder why he never talked in GTA 3. Just getting used to 3D oxygen must have been a nightmare. Okay, so Rockstar pulled a DC multiverse, again. No reason to judge them for that. I'll just judge them based on the slew of other things. But it's still sad that GTA 4 still can out-RPG some modern RPGs. Also, there's a way to unlock Claude Speed's clothes if you decide to kill the Kingpin rather than his reformed gang member friend. Not the worst routes a game could have. But hey, the jump from 2D to 3D never goes poorly, right? Right? No. And I know what someone's going to say.
Yahtzee did a video on this.
Objective. You have the technology. I can see it. The solution isn't just within your reach. It's in your hands. It's giraffes all the way down. How do you even reach this level of oversight?
Fallout 4 is not an RPG. Oh, sorry. Let me start over. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Fallout 4 is not an RPG. Be sure to like and subscribe. It's a fun game, tons of variety, and those glitches that only would tell you never get old. But this is not a game wherein you play a sorted role of anything. This isn't even a game where you really affect the other characters until the final act. This deformed thing is the result of layering on mechanics and new models on Fallout 3. What was the thinking here, Bethesda? Obsidian showed you how to add complexity and character to your future hobo simulator, so instead you made something that had more glitches than Fallout 3, and plays like Borderlands, but choose your own adventure book. You must be over your own computer monitors for how nearsighted you've become. I'm genuinely conflicted about this. It's not bad as a game, more like Borderlands 2 if the characters were better and the game was overall more accessible and immersive, but this is a terrible RPG. Even going beyond the engine limitations and stiff as dialogues, why limit the interactions with characters? Why streamline character customization into an unlockable perk tree? And why contrive such a series of scenarios? Your son has been kidnapped, but if you play it like a panicked parent, then the game folds its arms at you and refuses to continue. You have new base-building mechanics, but waste time settling a homestead and everybody acts like you're wasting your time. We finally get some payoff for the Institute from Fallout 3, but they're all that actively make things worse. The way they were initially pitched, I thought that Boston would be like 99% troglodytes and murderers and everything else, and that the Institute were actually turbo nerds trying to keep the riffraff in line. But no. The Institute are boogeymen. The Railroad seeks to free the programmable people made by the Institute. Then why give their killjoy slaves a personality at all? Maybe to blend in? I could kind of understand that. But even some of the ones that are outright androids have a personality. The Minutemen are an active force for good. But why are they the objectively best moral choice? Because Bethesda couldn't write intriguing conflict and organizations? Yes, that. Case in point, the Brotherhood of Steel is back. So why are they on a crusade? The Institute are a perfect foil for them. But why is Maxon, a man brought up in an altruism-based protectorate system, acting like straight-up? Speaking as a fan of the originals, the Brotherhood were not. They were isolationists that were researching technology above all else. Their war against the mutants came down to self-preservation, and maybe a little bit about helping others too. Somehow, by the time of Fallout 4, this collective thinking has gone from, let's begrudgingly work with outsiders and even mutants in order to survive and conquer, to, all mutant scum must. Are you kidding me, Bethesda? I've actually been toying with the idea of a Fallout tabletop campaign, based on rebuilding the world, and various forms of surrogate parenting and mentoring, and just from the umming and erring noises made by my friends and colleagues, I can at least gather that it'd be a better RPG than that. Originally, I was going to jump off of here and show different ways this could be fixed, but all of my suggestions pretty much boiled down to start from scratch, make an RPG and not Borderlands, and don't outright on your own source material. How about make a Fallout game and actually make it some kind of Fallout game with not, let's twist this game out of shape to wring as much money as possible out of our audience. But we all know Fallout is a lost cause by now. Bethesda gave Obsidian almost no time at all to make a game that would hopefully pale in comparison to their own Manifest Destiny project, and Obsidian still managed to build a huge and complex game with multiple factions, cowboys, robots, old ideas and new, and RPG systems that would still work with the old engine. Bethesda went on to make Skyrim, a power fantasy RPG with the right balance of accessibility and new features, and this abomination. You'd think they'd want to make a game on par with Skyrim again, but nope. Fallout 4 was the experiment that turned out okay financially, and the resulting games as service prequel has proven to be a monument built from congealed toxic sludge that struggles to hold its own weight over 2 years later. Obsidian took one look at the series' trajectory and said, well, that, and built their own space RPG instead. The first Fallout was great, a game that embodied the what-if spirit of sci-fi, and it showed us what a bit of context and depth can really do to show us the character behind the faction of paladins hiding in the wilderness and the well-armed forces of orcs that seek to pillage our strongholds.